Welcome to Uptown Chats, a podcast where we share stories about environmental justice by and for everyday people. I'm your co-host, Jaron.
And I'm your other co-host, Lonnie.
And today, we're covering everybody's favorite topic, trash talk.
Well, not that kind of trash talk. We don't want to get too spicy on this episode. We will actually be talking about actual trash, more specifically plastic bottles, packaging, and other stuff that usually ends up in either trash or recycling bins.
Yeah, but before we get to the good stuff, Lonnie, can you share WEAC's mission?
Absolutely. WEAC's mission is to build healthy communities by ensuring that people of color and or low-income residents participate meaningfully in the creation of sound and fair environmental health and protection policies and practices.
Thank you. So, as we mentioned, our topic today is trash, or solid waste, as we sometimes call it. And that includes plastic materials, things like packaging, bottles, and a bunch of other stuff. And unfortunately, those materials don't always end up getting recycled or processed in the way that we would like them to, or at all for that matter. So to help us unpack some of the emerging policies in New York that are helping us to handle our plastic and other waste better, we'll actually be joined by Danielle Dukey, who is a member of WEAC's Planning Committee.
Yeah, and Danielle's going to talk to us about two state-level bills, the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act. It's a mouthful, but it's also called PREA, and then the simple bottle bill. She's also going to give us a rundown on New York State's draft solid waste management plan, and that plan recommends actions for the state to reduce the climate impact of solid waste and provides direction for New Yorkers' waste reduction, how to reuse items, how to recycle, how to be collecting it, transporting, disposal, all of these things that go into having a waste system.
Absolutely. And we won't get into too much detail here because Danielle did a great job of that for us. So I say with that, let's just let Danielle do the explaining.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's go. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Danielle. We're super excited to have you on the podcast and to tell us a little bit about what's going on with waste and waste management here in New York State. You're obviously the expert, I think, at least more than me. I actually don't know how much Lonnie is an expert on this topic, but we're glad to have you fill in the details for us. But before we get into some of the trash talk, talking about what's going on here in New York State, I just wanted to give you a chance to just introduce yourself and tell us about your role at WEACT and just how you kind of got involved in this waste and sanitation work.
Great. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much for having me. This is an awesome opportunity to talk about waste and garbage. So firstly, my name is Danielle, and I have been a volunteering member with WEACT for the last 2 years. And I also want to say that I've learned so much and grown so much from the knowledge that I've gained from the organization. So I genuinely appreciate this opportunity. Aside from that, I am also on the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, also known as MSWAB, which is a board of volunteers who help to advance ideas, insights, and initiatives to help bring New York City closer to zero waste.
That's exciting. I feel like that is a great vision for us to be working towards. I know that, again, I don't live as much in the policy space as Lonnie does, but just thinking about this zero waste vision is always exciting to me to learn more about.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to learn a little bit more about some of the things that kind of go on behind the scenes, both policy related, and we'll talk about a little bit about plans that are created throughout the state or even the city when it comes to waste. I think a lot of people just think, I just don't want to see trash. And that is their extent, and that's all they want to hear, and that's all they want to do. But there's so much more that goes on kind of behind the scenes. And I'm so glad you were able to kind of come and talk to us today about those and fill us in for those details. I don't know nearly as much as Danielle knows about waste, but I do enjoy that. And talking about waste and waste policy. So I always look to her for her knowledge and expertise, as well as being a volunteer and on our WEACT Planning Committee. So I guess we can dive right in. I want to put together three different things, and I know that's going to feel like a lot, but there's kind of three things that are happening right now that I think it's important to kind of talk about, and you can talk about them together. Two of them are bills that are actually in the state legislature right now, which is the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, or PREA. And then there's also the bottle bill. And on top of those two bills, there's also a draft solid waste management plan that's going on right now. And I know that you have been talking about all three of these things extensively for like the last few weeks, if not a few months, talking about some of these things. So I just want you to kind of give a little bit of higher level overview for listeners, like what these things are and kind of how they're connected to each other.
Sure. So, starting with the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, that is a state bill that would require companies that sell or distribute packaging materials, which are mostly made of plastic, to register with a packaging reduction organization to develop a packaging reduction and recycling plan. So, this has a couple of implications on the packager level. Firstly, it would reduce plastic packaging over the next 10 years. It would require packaging to be reused or recycled. It would also require producer fees to cover municipalities' cost of waste management and recycling. So this could actually save millions of dollars across cities in New York State. And then most importantly to me, it would prohibit 14 toxic chemicals and materials from packaging that are known to be harmful to human health and the environment. The Bigger Better Bottle Bill would provide for the expansion of the current New York Bottle Bill by including more types of eligible beverage containers. So it would add a refundable deposit to most containers except for milk and milk alternatives, infant formula, and 100% juice containers, but everything else besides that would be included. So even liquor bottles. This would also increase the refundable deposit fee from 5 cents to 10 cents, and it would reduce single-use beverage bottles by 25% by 2030. So it would actually reduce a lot of litter and single use in the waste stream.
I guess my kind of question to you is, so with the packaging bill with PRIUS, which is the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act. PRIUS sounds so much easier, but I just want to make sure everyone kind of has the full acronym there all the time. What's kind of like the goal here? I know it's obviously to reduce packaging, but is it to incentivize producers to make less things with plastic, or what's kind of like some of the more ultimate goal here?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to reduce the amount of plastic that's in the waste stream because it kind of falls on the consumer and the municipality to understand what is the best way to dispose of it. But right now, without it really being regulated, it's kind of a free-for-all for all of these manufacturers to produce as much plastic, and then the responsibility falls on us. So in a perfect world, when this bill gets passed, there would be a recycling and packaging reduction plan so that we don't have to be inundated with this responsibility of how to responsibly dispose of plastic.
Is it possible to kind of like walk through a little bit, just like a normal day in someone's life? Like if this bill were to pass, like what would it look like then on our end, from buying a product, from product being produced, being put on a shelf, to me buying it, to me disposing it, and then the city and municipal. Can you like kind of walk through like what the change would look like, kind of on the ground?
Yeah, I think one example could be buying something that would normally come wrapped in like the plastic vinyl, which is not really recyclable because it's a flimsy plastic. If we were to remove that out of the waste stream, someone can buy something with cardboard packaging instead. And, they bring it home, they take the product out, and then the cardboard can easily go into their paper recycling. And then, case closed. They don't have to worry about what to do with plastic because it's not there.
Yeah, see, I think that makes sense from buying a product and having to unpack all those other layers of like, well, now I have to do all this extra work, and I think that it seems like there's a clear benefit for consumers in a really obvious way of like, that's one less thing for us to have to do when we're buying products, because add it into the layer of all the things that we have to think about on a given day to put that burden on the consumer as opposed to the producer of a product, that makes a lot of sense.
And then for the bottle bill, I didn't realize that there were different types of bottles that can and cannot be kind of like returned. You're talking about like when we go to when you see people in the machines and you put in there and get the 5 cent back. I didn't realize there were certain things that were eligible and certain things that were not. Can you talk a little more about that and like the different eligibility and like how that will change and who's that impact? Who gets the benefit from that kind of law being passed?
Yeah, so just to take a step back, there are some containers or cartons where it has the deposit fee and which states are eligible to redeem it. So that's how you know whether you can receive that deposit when you send it to a redemption center. And honestly, this could benefit anyone who puts in the effort to go out and redeem, that money back. So I think, especially in this economy where people are really trying to keep as much money as possible, this is a great way to kind of mitigate all of the issues we have around an unstable economy.
It's like, yeah, that's actually a really good point, because there's a lot of people who do kind of go through and collect these kind of bottles almost as a living, or as a source of income. And I was thinking about the guy who comes to our spot, like where my apartment is, and he kind of goes through our actual recycling. I see him all the time, and I wave to him and talk to him. Like sometimes there's times where I've had stuff in my in my hands for my recycling, and I like pass it off to him to kind of so he can sort through. But he collects a lot too. He'll come there with like a shopping cart and have a lot. And I know where he's going somewhere to redeem. So I'm thinking about people like that who use that as a source of income. It would be very beneficial for them to have a wider range, I'm assuming, of products that they can actually collect and redeem.
Yeah, I think it would also motivate more people to go ahead and start sending their stuff back to be redeemed, because right now a lot of people don't know about it or don't care. They think 5 cents is not enough or not even worthy, but 10 cents could actually move the needle.
Yeah, especially like you think add it up over the course of an entire bag of recycled bottles. That's essentially doubling the value of that container of bottles. So that's interesting to hear. And I'm kind of curious, and then maybe we can transition to talk a little bit about the solid waste management plan, just like what from your work on trying to help move these bills forward. What's kind of the reception of these two bills from the legislator, and just from folks that you've worked with in terms of likelihood of moving it forward, and just maybe other thoughts and concerns that you've heard as you've been talking to folks about these bills, and what the opportunities there are to move it forward.
Yeah, I think anyone that's for the environment is very much a supporter of these two bills. So it definitely would remove a lot of unnecessary waste out of the regular garbage stream. Unfortunately, we have seen some resistance on the legislative side. I hate to address the elephant in the room, but there are a lot of plastic lobbyists who are paying our legislators to not support or pass this bill. So we're kind of up against people with steep pockets that can pay and persuade our legislators to push this bill to the side, while all of us are doing this for free because we actually care enough. And it's an uphill battle, but I do feel optimistic.
With that, I think maybe we can pivot and talk a little bit more about that solid waste management plan, and maybe the connection there with these other two bills that we've been talking about.
Sure. So just to level set, the solid waste management plan is the Department of Sanitation solid waste management plan for 2026. So it's a plan that will address how New York City's municipal solid waste, also known as trash, will be managed for the next 10 years. It touches on recycling and organics collection, as well as other waste streams, but it also highlights the locations for where our non-recyclable waste will be sent, and the method in which it will be disposed of, which is through incineration, which is also known as waste to energy, or buried in a landfill.
Yeah, I have one thing just to clarify. I do believe this was the plan that comes out every 10 years, correct?
Initially, it was every 20 years, but I guess sanitation decided to make it a 10-year plan this go around. So it's really interesting to see what what they will change this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think about 20 years is a long time to have a plan for something, especially with a lot of things that as they evolve very quickly, to wait 20 years to rethink a plan if you have to pivot or anything like that. So I think 10 years is a nicer timeline, but I think it's really important that for folks to understand, like, these are the things that kind of are happening behind the scenes when we're not really thinking about the fact that someone has to sit there and plan all of this out. And we have to make sure we have advocates like Danielle who are in these spaces, making sure, telling people how these things should be planned out, because there's a lot of things that can go missing, whether it be not thinking about organic waste properly, or not thinking about community composting, or other aspects of things that we've talked about on this podcast. But I didn't even realize it was 20 years originally. That's a long time for a plan, and then not to be able to revisit that plan. So if you wanted to kind of go a little bit into kind of like how are these connected, because I know they're all kind of happening like right now, but I feel like there's it's a perfect moment in time to talk about how these two bills and this plan are connected.
Yeah, so I will say, I think that the passing of the bottle bill and the Packaging Reduction Act would significantly reduce the amount of waste that is exported, especially plastics. So New Yorkers actually do pay for waste exports through our tax dollars. So that would impact us in so many ways. They would remove a substantial percentage of materials out of the waste stream and encourage people to recycle, like we just talked about, and redeem their bottles, especially during a time when our economy is unstable, because those coins could quickly add up. And then I also think that the reduction of plastic waste would alleviate the negative impact that our waste has on the environment. So in the Packaging Reduction Act, removing 14 toxic chemicals out of plastic would not only provide relief to our air, water, and soil quality, but could also improve public health in the long run.
Thank you for that. I feel like this is kind of tying into the next question that we have, but it seems like there are clear benefits from all of these pieces in terms of the public health benefits and thinking about both people and the environment, and the through line there that we're always trying to connect and thinking about as an organization that's focused on environmental justice is how is that lens of environmental justice kind of overlaid with this issue. So you've kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but just more explicitly, can you kind of recap how the issue of waste management or as a whole, but kind of more specifically with these bills and this solid waste management plan really are related to environmental justice, and in a perfect world are helping to benefit environmental justice communities?
Yeah, I actually have three points here. Firstly, that the garbage that we produce as a city is sent to communities that have to deal with our consumption and waste. Whether it is burned in an overburdened community like in Newark, New Jersey, or Chester, Pennsylvania, or if it's buried in a landfill somewhere in upstate New York, there are harmful environmental impacts which contaminates the air, soil, and water supply in those areas. And then there's also the issue of waste transfer stations right here in the city. They're usually located in overburdened neighborhoods like the one in South Bronx, where asthma rates are high and sanitation truck traffic contributes to that. And then lastly, there's also the litter issue that we all deal with. The majority of plastic waste, so think water and soda bottles, plastic straws and utensils, plastic wrappers and bags, they all end up in our ecosystem here in the city. They clog our street drains, which has been problematic during bad weather conditions, and then plastic bags end up in our trees. So all of these things are actually damaging our city's infrastructure.
And would you be able to speak to a little bit of when it comes to the solid waste management plan, do you feel like the draft so far is trying to address some of these issues through the lens of environmental justice as kind of its basis and trying to think through that? Or is there more opportunity for that plan to address those kind of environmental justice issues?
I think there is a lot of opportunity to address it. The plan mostly talks about what they're currently doing, and it seems like they just want to continue pushing that process through. But there could be a lot more done to educate people on zero waste and how to recycle properly, because a lot of New Yorkers still don't do that. Our city's current recycling capture rate is about 18%. When we have the North America's most robust and advanced recycling system, it's kind of wild that we're not even at 50% recycling rate. So sanitation can definitely do more to address that.
Can you unpack that number a little bit? So by capture, you said 18% capture rate for recycling. Does that mean 18% of the possible materials that could be recycled are being recycled, or does it mean something else?
The possible materials that could be recycled.
That's quite low. That's quite low.
I'm so shocked by that number, because you think about, I feel like it was anything, because I know we've talked about on the podcast before, and Daniel and I talked a lot about sometimes food waste and organic waste, people still not really catching on to how to do that properly in their homes. But I feel like we've all had such an ingrained thing about plastics and cardboard and paper. There's a song I always think of from a TV show from Nickelodeon, which I'm not going to sing here. But I just feel like we were also ingrained in that to kind of, you would think that those kind of capture rates for recyclables will be so much higher, especially for the city where you see the blue bins at every single apartment. You see the bags, you see the people handling it. So I don't know. I just, in my head, it's 18% just seems so low. I'm disappointed. We got to do better.
I know.
New York.
We could do better. Well, besides being really sad that we have so much more opportunity to be recycling in New York, one of the things that you said that I wanted to circle back to is around the piece of sending our waste to other communities and the impact there. Something you mentioned earlier, too, that's kind of related to that is the idea of, when it's sent to different communities outside of the city, including New Jersey, some of that is incinerated, right? It's burned, and we have actually another episode that we did earlier. So I encourage folks who are kind of curious, like what does that mean when you burn plastic and you're burning waste? What are the implications, or what are the consequences there? We'll make sure to include a link in the show notes for folks to listen to that episode, because unsurprisingly, it's bad. Burning trash and burning plastic, not great. But to, unpack more of like, what does it actually mean for folks that are living in the communities that are nearby those facilities? We get into more detail and talk to some folks. So you can check that out. But on this thread of, the solid waste management plan, clearly there's opportunities to, embed environmental justice maybe more concretely in that plan, and, helping to move these bills forward. We're always trying to think about, how can folks who are listening to this episode right now take action, get involved if folks are really moved to do so? What are ways that folks can help, support the advocacy that you've been doing?
Yeah, I think a good starting point for people is to participate in any street cleanup, even if it's just one, just to see the full extent of the damage that litter, especially plastics, has on our environment. And once they have that context, they can advocate for the passing of the two bills that we talked about. They didn't pass this year in 2025, but going into 2026, we would like to see more advocacy and more support around these bills, so they can encourage their senators and their assembly members to sign on to the bills. And then also testifying during public comment periods, especially with the solid waste management plan, there will be an opportunity for people to have their voices heard and explain why these issues matter to them. And I would also add engaging with your friends and family and coworkers on these issues, because chances are some of them may not know how to recycle properly or understand why it's important.
Yeah, and I think everyone can kind of keep a lookout. Make sure you're signed up for We Act newsletter. That's where we kind of put a lot of our advocacy and call to action information. Also, our membership meetings are going to be an opportunity. And I think I'm going to put it out here on the podcast now, but I think Danielle should come talk to our membership a little bit in Northern Manhattan. I think we need a little refresher on how to actually properly recycle and that was pretty much it.
to boost our sad numbers.
Yeah, I was like, to put that. So I feel like we can have a whole Northern Manhattan initiative of like, I think we want to get better than the 18.
Yes.
Or there's the campaign.
Yes.
Better than 18.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really important that folks kind of get an understanding of what's going on and how it actually impacts everyone around us, even though it may not impact you directly here in the city when it comes to, because we ship our trash out. And I think we spend about, $500 million, Danielle, to ship our waste. And so imagine if we could recoup some of that money. What are the funding that things could actually go towards, as opposed to just sending our waste around to pollute other communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a lot of pieces to this that we've covered, but just reiterating to folks, these two bills at the New York State Legislature, the Packing Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, PREA, I'll say it again, the BOTA bill, and then the Solid Waste Management Plan. Beyond those things, is there anything else kind of on this stream of solid waste and plastics, or just anything else that's kind of that's on your mind or that you're thinking about that you want to plug or mention for folks to just be thinking about as we're kind of in this space?
Yeah, I will say I personally enjoy living a zero waste, or at least a reduced waste lifestyle. I actually don't think it is as difficult as people think it is. Once you adjust your mindset to realize that not everything belongs in the trash, it becomes second nature to find a better way to dispose of things. And certain things don't even need to be thrown away. Like if you have a glass jar, you can actually use that to store something else, and it doesn't have to be recycled at all. So you're just using it. So, kind of just being creative with our waste.
Absolutely. I appreciate the mindset shift. I myself have also kind of gone through a bit of that process recently, trying to use different, avoiding plastic packaging materials, thinking about other types of materials, but then thinking about ways to reduce, reuse, recycle. That whole, old saying, still very relevant these days. So I appreciate that reminder for that mindset. So thinking about it at all levels, at the high policy level, things that we can do there, but also those actions that we can take on an individual level to contribute that maybe feel a little bit more accessible and immediate. So we always appreciate that reminder.
Yeah, it's always necessary for us to have both kind of approaches from top down in our individual everyday lives and the changes that we need to make, but we also need those structural changes from the top down as well in order for everyone to kind of meet in the middle so that we can all, again, the goal is to have zero waste. And I think we can all work together and everyone can contribute. There's something small. There's small changes you can make that don't have to be drastic. You don't have to go through and completely overhaul your entire lifestyle tomorrow after you've heard Danielle speaking, but there's small things that you can think about, like being creative with those glass jars. I have a box of glass jars, and I was like, oh, I don't have a container to put this food that I just made in, and I was like, oh no, I have plenty of containers to put this food in.
Oh, you see?
And things like that. And so it's like, it's kind of getting out of the mindset of that you need something new or that you have to start fresh, that you already probably have all the tools you need to make these changes.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure to rate and review the show on whatever platform you listen on. If you have thoughts, we encourage you to reach out to us with your thoughts and suggestions at podcast@weact.org.
Check out We Act on Facebook at We Act for EJ. That's WEACTFOREJ. On Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at We Act for EJ. That's WEACT4EJ. And check out our website, weact.org, for more information about environmental justice.
Till next time.
Bye.